But the point is, if you want to take benefit from this act, it would require you to accept that you are not Indian in the first place, which many might contest.
No.
Because the act enables people who came from Bangladesh or Pakistan or Afghanistan, who are Hindus, to become Indian citizens. But what I am saying is that it implies, if you want to take benefit of this act, it implies that you are not an Indian, but nevertheless, because of a religion, the state will afford you a citizenship. So a lot of people who are excluded, they are Indian. Why should they accept that they were not Indian, but that because they're Hindu, they should be accepted?
Because persecuted people who are under pressure will do whatever they need to get paperwork. We're in a perverse situation where people of other faiths who've come from Bangladesh will get the paperwork, but Muslims born and bred in India won't get the paperwork because they don't have the paperwork and they've got no recourse and they will become illegal aliens. This is the problem. And the problem is that this act is dividing the country. Okay? The politicians are slowly dividing India. They're dividing the secular fabric of India. Okay? I was born in India. I only lived there a short time, but I have many fond memories of a multi-faith village where we lived in harmony with the Hindu community. In fact, I used to go and eat.
And not just Hindu community, all other communities.
Absolutely.
India is not just Hindus. There are Sikhs, there are Christians, and all sorts of other faiths. Right, Abdul's been waiting patiently.
My concern, particularly with the possible implementation of this register, if I just give your audience an example, that I come from a small village of about 1,200 people in the state of Gujarat, and there are at least 200 to 300 people in my village who are extremely poor, and they are what in India called Adivasis. So they don't have any land holdings. They basically want land that's been gifted by the government. They don't have any property as such, and they certainly do not have.
And they probably never had an official job, nothing. So no official documents.
They basically work on the land of the Muslim villages because they're basically laborers. Now they have no documents at all. Now if this registration will require them to produce a document, now I can tell you from my own personal experience that significant proportion of those don't go to school. So one of the arguments that they have is not only will you need to produce a birth certificate, but if you don't have a birth certificate, if you can produce records of having gone to school, that may be something. They still haven't actually put regulations as to what the regulation would be, because the very idea of registration hasn't yet been put into place. But the concern is that the regulation would be such that it will affect the very poor, because it is categorized very clearly in India that if you are a person of money, you can buy your way in. So if you haven't got a birth certificate, you'll be able to buy that. So it will really have an impact on those very poor, whatever faith they may be. They will simply not be able to produce.
And also, I presume one of the problems you're going to face, and I have seen this in Bangladesh, for example, that normally it's not difficult for you to go to your local chairman or whatever the arrangement is, and go and ask for a birth certificate, and they'll follow the process and they'll issue you the birth certificate. But presumably now there will be greater focus and reluctance by many to issue birth certificate to those that doesn't have it.
Absolutely, and I think you'll get an example from one of our colleagues here of his experience of his own family. And I've been told already that in my village people are already concerned, those who don't have. The other concern you have to have in India is that they are very particular. And I can tell you from my personal experience that if your name is spelled slightly wrong, your birth certificate will not be accepted. So though many of the ministers right now are saying that they have no plan, but you can tell by their actions what they have done in Assam and what they have said until this protest came along, that there are, even the Home Minister has said in the Lok Sabha in India, the House of Commons equivalents of that in India, that their plan is to have national registration of citizens throughout
India.
India.
Have to, isn't it? I mean, you can't just have one state having it and others not. So either you abandon it everywhere. I mean, I know that Assam had a particular history why, and a long-running debate about whether Bengalis were coming over and taking over, or taking jobs and whatever. But But if you have it in one state, you can't then say, I'm not going to have it to the other state.
Well, they would have justified Assam is because Assam, as you know, North Indian state, they've always had issues about who are Indian citizens, who are refugees. So that was their original explanation to introducing that in that part of India. But the BJP's plan, and if you look at their entire record ever since they've been in government in various forms, they have always had this plan. And what the other concern I have is that if you're not able to produce documents, they're going to categorize you as doubtful citizen. That's the term they have currently used. And what it means is that significant proportion of population, particularly Muslims in my view, and the very poor, one of the things they will bring in is that those who are doubtful citizens will not be able to partake in elections. They will not be able to vote.
Right. So I was going to bring it next, but Dalvinder, if I could pick up with you. I mean, is it really a political engineering through the back door to ensure that a large number of people who may not vote for BJP, to exclude them from being from participating in the election?
Like it is just divide and rule issue, as promoted by the British. BJP is also following the same two-nation theory. Exactly.
Who is the blame Jinnah of?
Two-nation means Hindus and Muslims. In Hindus, they include everybody: Buddhists, Sikhs,
Yeah.
Parsis.
They say Hindus, but
All
what
of
they
them.
mean is
They are
Muslim
Hindus.
and all others.
Yeah, yeah. So it is the British who promoted this theory, and after independence, they didn't did away with this theory. They accepted it. Congress as well as Muslim League,
Yeah.
they all accepted this theory, and that was mainly to divide and rule, and they are doing exactly the same. BJP is promoting the theory of Hindu Rashtravad, Hindu Rashtra, that all others are Hindus and India is a Hindu nation, and Muslim have they are not included in Hindus, and all the laws are made against the Hindus, and also they are following the internationally Islamophobia promoted by the British, promoted by the US imperialism, and they are promoting same in Islamophobia in India as well, to get favors from the US as well as Britain.
Right. Arsha, what would happen to the people who are doubtful citizens or who exhaust the mechanism of appeal and unable to get themselves included in the register?
So there have been detention centers constructed for them. As we have seen in Assam, the people are already there in detention camps, and today I read in the news today morning that they have reported 27 deaths till now in those detention camps. So that's their plan, that they want to make Muslims a second-class citizens and throw them all into detention camps. That's the plan, and they want to rip them off with their citizenship, so they don't have voting rights, so they don't get a problem in 2024 elections. That's the basic plan behind it.
So at the moment, one of the issues that I follow, I was trying to look at, is that many people went through the appeal system, but very few had actually succeeded. Are you able to enlighten us? The process of appealing the decision and whether its due process are being followed.
No, it's a very difficult process. Like if you're once proved to be a doubtful citizen, it will take you ages to prove your citizenship. It will take ages for you to prove that you have been living here. You have been living in the country for seven decades, and that you were born here. That you chose to be in India, and you are a citizen by choice, not by chance. So it will give you a hard time to prove your citizenship. So it's not a very easy process if you are excluded from the list, and they don't have this appealing process. This is too complicated, and it also does not guarantee you that you will be acknowledged as a citizen. Okay, so that's the problem, that even though you have an appeal, you may have got an appeal, but you see, in Assam there are 19 lakh people. How many of them have appealed? How many of them have successfully appealed this?
And also, I suppose you need to have the money to fund an
Of
appeal.
course. Like,
If you look at the mechanism of the Indian state, okay, people will not go against the government, right? So if you're a sitting judge and you can be removed
Well,
by the
we've
state.
seen some examples recently. We'll come to that later on. I mean, the Babri Mosque case is an interesting example. We've seen one, I think, in UP, where a mosque applied to renew its license to extend the license for prayer and to call to prayer to be aired, which it had for decades, but on this occasion declined. And when they went to the court also refused to grant their appeal. And there are various other ones. Right, we're going to take a short break. So far we've discussed mainly the impact of NRC. Worth reminding you that NRC, the National Register of Citizens, is a program rolled out in Assam, but it is likely, or at least the BJP would like to extend it to other states. So far in Assam, 1.9 million people have been excluded, of which vast majority are non-Muslims, but as a proportion, a larger proportion of Muslims incidentally find themselves on the wrong side of this register, including celebrated war veterans, including very senior politicians, and so on. After the break, we will be taking a closer look at the relationship between NRC and the Citizens Amendment Act. We would also look at the response so far from politicians and from the civil society and the demonstrations that we have seen so far taking place. We would also look at the response from the Indian state and what it says about modern India. So stay with us until then, and we'll see you after a very short break. Allah Hafiz.